Stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call to order roll call starting on my right.
Councilperson Josh Arm. Councilperson Brent Byer.
Mayor Jimmy John King.
Councilperson Craig Anderson.
Councilperson Jeremiah Holgen.
Okay, we're all present. So the next thing we're going to do is presentation of the GFO award. Once again, the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada has awarded the city of Stewartville another gold chip to put on our plaque of our excellence in finance. Demonstrating constructive spirit of full disclosure, clearly communicate financial story, and motivate potential users and users to report. We can thank the council, but we can also need to thank heavily to Carla Strain, our finance director, who has been taking care of our finances for the last several years. Again, what's this, your second or third?
This is my second.
Second one for Carla. So we're gonna presentate this to Carla. Once again, the citizens can be happy to know how financially prudent Carla is with her money. And how astute the council is in using the money.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Approval of tonight's agenda. Any additions or deletions from the staff?
Should be good on this end.
None? Anything from here?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. That'll move us to approval of council meeting minutes of March 8th, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second to approve the minutes?
I'll second that.
We have a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? That carries. Take us to finance and budget. We have the accounts payable listing with the additional accounts payable listing. Any questions can be directed to our award-winning finance director, Carla Strain.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. That'll take us into motions and general business, and the first item tonight under motions and general business will be a resolution accepting the bids and approving the contract for the 2022 CIP. And before we start, I want to know it's not a public hearing. I alone will decide who gets to speak and who doesn't. And I also want it on the record that as in the past 13 years, I've made it very clear, anonymous letters mean nothing to me. If you're not gonna come and talk to us, or not gonna put your name to something, I don't even wanna see it or hear it. I give it zero credibility. That being said, the bids and qualification packages were accepted on March 8th, 2022 at 10 a.m. The engineer's estimate for the project is $1,569,856. 4 contractors submitted packages and they were evaluated by the Public Works Committee consisting of council members Brent Byers, Jeremiah Holgen, City Administrator Bill Schimmel, Public Works Director Sean Hale, and City Engineer Jenna Obernolte. This project was advertised and instructed to be a best bid evaluation, and the qualification packages were evaluated in the Public Works Committee prior to opening the bid prices. The topics of the evaluation were included in the instructions to the bidders and are as follows. Project references for 7 years, performance on projects of similar size and function, projects completed in Stewartville in the past 10 years, significant personnel resumes, project approach, project schedule. Each one was weighted by a certain percentage of the bid. Contracting firms were evaluated by the information submitted in the package, and some packages were incomplete in the information provided, which does lead to some low technical scores. The base bid total was divided by the average technical score of each contractor to decide on the best value contract winner, as shown in the following table. Now, just for the record, for the public that's watching to know, best value is a little different than low bidder because they are evaluated. They're scored on all the areas we just talked about. No one knows the bids until after one is picked. Contracting firms that were bid were Elcon, BCM, DeCook, and Elcor. Staff discussed the bids and evaluation with City Attorney Leth, who cautioned that the city's failure to follow best value bidding process as advertised could result in litigation with unsuccessful bidders. Following the best value bidding process, it is recommended to award the bid to Elcor Construction for $1,879,868.60. Estimated assessment rates based on the bid prices compared to the feasibility study estimates are as follows. The feasibility study showed an approximate cost of $73.70. Water and sewer service assessment share would have been $2,466.75. Excuse me. Elcor's base bid linear foot assessment price came out to $112.39 per linear foot, with water service and service assessment share at $3,120. Based on an average 66-foot width lot, the average assessment would increase by approximately $3,200. Council action requested will be to approve or deny a resolution receiving bids and awarding contracts for 2022 capital improvement project Elcor Construction. I, myself, would propose a motion of rejecting any and all bids. All 4 bids go out. We rebid this at a later date. I personally, myself, would not go for that estimate per linear foot. So I will make that motion that all 4 are done and we'll rebid this at a later date.
You need a second before we have discussion, or can we talk?
Talk.
So I tend to agree with that. That's a hard hit. If I was one of those residents, to be hit with a $3,200 increase that's what stands out at me on all this. Plus I received a little feedback about the process in general and what's actually best for the city and so forth. And with that, I talked to some staff and I've looked around and tried to research some things. And, I don't know that there's a perfect tool in doing it. In reading this, I think it's a very fair process. It's unfortunate that some people didn't fill it out completely, and I'm not 100% sure how or why. But I'm not against moving forward and maybe tweaking it or looking at it to see if there's ways that we can improve the scoring of this. I do believe, again, I want to be very clear that I think it was done fairly, and that's how I want to work. I want the best for the city, but I want it to be done fairly for everybody. Going back to what he had said, that was something that I was going to bring up as well. I understand that it would be possible to maybe go back to the drawing board somewhat, or at least get the other package figured out, do 2 separate bids potentially this fall, and go at it again, hoping that maybe there's some resolve to the Ukraine war, maybe some clearer heads get into government and straighten out our oil and energy system, and we get prices back down to realistic. I was gonna ask you, Jenna, did you say the difference between a barrel of oil when the last bid we did, did it go up like $40-some?
The difference between a ton of bituminous,
Okay.
our last bids were around 80, and they ranged on this bid set from $98 to $122 per ton.
So there's obviously a little bit of a risk in my opinion, because do prices ever come down? You generally don't always see it. But I'm also hearing, all these scare tactics and factors in on why the prices are going up and what's in and out of our control. Maybe they do come back down a little bit in the fall. Maybe I wanna be very clear too, I don't think that any of the contractors on this are trying to gouge, I do believe, I mean, I know that their prices have gone up, I understand that all the way across the board. So I don't want it to sound like that, but I do believe that I would like to see it rebid and maybe even to buy time for the people if their assessments are gonna go way up another couple grand. Maybe it comes down a little bit, but maybe they have time to prepare for it. With that, I know that there's gonna be more discussion, but I will second your motion.
Staff, anything they wanna say?
Just, I received one comment from a citizen along the project who lives on 800. On the project for this year. She also commented that she felt right now, with the way the situation is, kind of reiterated some of Craig's thoughts, that this was too big a jump. I did tell her that just because we rebid, or if we rebid, there's never any guarantee that things will be up or lower, but that's what we're at the mercy of. But she still felt in favor of holding off and re-looking at it. I believe 2 of our staff also got calls, just with the concern of that adjustment being pretty high for what they were kind of hoping for, so.
Josh?
Paul, I know this is gonna be a 2-phase project.
Correct.
If we do throw out these bids and bid in the fall, can it be done in 1 year?
So, yes, so we have this being a 2-part project. We had north of 6 and south of 6, this being south of 6. We had them separate years and are bidding separately because of funding sources. North of 6 is a state aid route and has to follow state wage rates. If we bid them together, then the whole thing has to follow the state wage rates and other criteria that the state puts on. If we bid them separately, then this section does not have to follow that criteria. So the recommendation would be, if this is rejected at this time, to bid 2 separate projects at the same time. So 2 separate contracts, which could mean it's the same contractor or 2 different contracts. Both projects would likely have some similar contractors looking at them, but also some different, because some go for that state aid funding source and some won't work on that because they don't meet all the criteria. So there is a chance we could be working with 2 different contractors. Being that 6th does not actually get impacted with construction, it is doable to do both at the same time. And depending on the contractor, one contractor could handle both, or again, it could be 2 different contractors where then that could be handled also.
Brent?
Thinking about this, I mean, if it was me on Fifth Avenue, it'd be a pretty hard pill to swallow, the extra money. I mean, it's, a lot of people, it's a hard pill to swallow just coming up with that money to begin with. But you add up to an average of 3,200, I think, we'd be doing the public wrong, the citizens wrong. So I'm all for holding off a year. Again, it's a gamble, and I hope, the people on Fifth Avenue know it's a gamble. But we can try it again next year and see, or in the fall, and see what happens.
Jeremiah?
No, I hit the floor when I saw that number, so. I'm all for just rejecting.
All right, nobody has nothing else to add, we got a motion and a second to reject any and all bids and rebid at a later date. All in favor say aye.
I
Opposed? That carries. Next motion, next item under motions general business, resolution reestablishing precincts and polling place. A panel of Minnesota judges have released the long anticipated congressional and legislative district maps to be in place for the next decade. Every 10 years, the legislature is charged with redrawing the state's maps to effect population shifts from the decennial census Over the past several months, it is yet to be seen if the legislature will meet the statutory deadline of February 15th to complete the redistricting. Since legislators failed to reach an agreement, a panel of Minnesota judges has stepped in to create new maps, which are now finalized. Wow, imagine that. Minnesota statute 204B.14 sub 3D requires that precinct boundaries must be reestablished within 60 days of when the legislature has been redistricted, or at least 19 weeks before the state primary election, whichever comes first. The city of Stewartville has one precinct, and it's at the Stewartville Civic Center. So the council action requested to approve resolution 2022 a resolution reestablishing precincts in polling places.
Bill, do you think you can get our precinct boundaries figured out 19 weeks before the election?
We'll see how that goes
We're
for
doing,
us.
you guys are for election, right?
Yeah, see if your boundaries change.
You want sheriffs this year? Are you? Okay, we have a motion to approve just the resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We do have a second.
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That also carries. That'll take us under the next one, is under Public Works Department, approval of maintenance 1. Maintenance 1 hire. Due to a recent illness disability, the Public Works Department will now be short 1 employee. As the Personnel Committee recently held interviews in January for a maintenance 1 position, they have met again to review the applications and discuss the interviews. Personnel Committee, along with City Administrator Schimmel and Public Works Director Hale, are recommending hiring Logan Zimmer for the maintenance 1 position, pay grade 7.3. Council action requested to approve hiring Logan Zimmer for the maintenance 1 position. Do we have any questions? Discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to hire Logan Zimmer.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to hire Logan Zimmer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That will carry. That takes us out of motions and general business. And that moves us into mayor's staff and consultant reports. Tonight, the city would like to send their sympathies to the families of Gloria Ashford, Dorothy Cooper, and Shirley Morency. But a happy birthday, a happy 105th birthday to Myrtle Teeby. You go and wish her a happy birthday, Jeremiah? This lady set me on my path to my future as a young man. I gotta get up and see Myrtle. Congratulations on that, Myrtle. Congratulations also to Alicia Nelson as the Chamber's Volunteer of the Year. She put her heart and soul to that, and she's very, very appreciated by the entire community. Don't forget the 18th Annual Food for Kids, sponsored by Kiwanis, will be held on April 2nd after a 2-year layoff due to COVID. Volunteers, if you're unable to volunteer, please consider financial donation, or you may round up dollars at Fairway. Don't forget the big ones this Friday night. The Toast and Taste, put on by the Stewartville Foundation. You gonna be there, Brent?
Unfortunately, I can't.
Oh,
I'll be there in spirit.
the rest of us are gonna be there. It's gonna be a big deal. It was a great deal last time it was held. It had to be laid off because of COVID, but it's gonna come back strong and good. Now, if you didn't know it, you're gonna know it now. Today is National Ag Day. I'm proud to be one of the less than 1% that feeds the entire nation in the world. I do.
Cheryl reminded me and said I should probably bring you something, but I thought, well, heck, he's had enough handouts already over the years.
Even all the living I take from you folks, it's still an honor and a privilege to make sure you're provided with the safest food, fuel, fiber, and pharmaceuticals in the world. I do this day and night. I personally take care of 165 people every day myself. Without me getting up in the morning and doing that, they'd go hungry. Now, I don't expect any financial donation, but you should hug a farmer whenever you see one. That's all I've got. That takes us on to city administrator's report.
Pretty short report in your packet. We've all just research and some of our projects that are ongoing, so nothing new to add.
Any questions for the administrator? right, thank you, Bill. The award-winning finance director Carla Carla Strange report.
I have no report for you tonight.
Really? How do you keep winning them awards with no report? Public Works Director, Sean?
Reports in there, nothing out of the ordinary.
Suppose you guys are getting anxious to mow along here, it gets raining, now it warms up.
We better get some dirt and some seed put in the damaged areas for the
We can
flowers.
see some green grass pretty quick if it gets warm again. Any questions for our Public Works Director? All right, thank you, Sean. City Engineer Jenna, you got anything special?
Nothing additional, no.
All right, any questions for our city engineer while we got her here? All right, next up is our newly shaved and sheared public or library director. What have you got to tell us, Nate?
Man, you're on a roll.
I got you tonight, I got you tonight.
Above and beyond what's in my report, the Tiny Art Show kit, has been our most popular kit to date with over 270 kits handed out. We sent over 100 of them between the middle school and high school as well, as part of that. And we've gotten over 50 submissions back so far. The final day for that is the last day of March, and we're gonna start putting them up this weekend. And they're pretty cool. I think a lot of people put a lot of really interesting things together, went a lot of different directions. People did a really good job with their artist statements, and I'm really proud of Stewartville for this one. This is really neat. This is the first time I asked for anything back, and darn it if everybody didn't do their homework. So I'm real proud of everybody.
Good.
How's your shed working out?
The shed's great, and we're really getting a chance to reclaim, since we've moved to more of a programming model for our library service and with the kits and everything else, we just need more storage for things like art supplies, and those are more temperature sensitive. So there are things that we are putting in the shed that aren't, and things like paint and, my office looks like aisle 8 of Michael's threw up on it, so that's going away, which I'm so thankful to be getting my office back, and the shed is a big part of that.
Good. What are you gonna do, Bill? His office used to make yours look good. You're gonna need a shed, don't you?
Shut up after my stuff here.
Any other questions for Nate? Thank you, Nate. No fire chief, no pool director, takes us to committee commission, board of commerce. We've got nothing in the packet from the chamber, EDHRA, we just held a meeting tonight.
Yep.
We'll be getting you all that information here shortly. Finance,
Nothing.
part 4.
We met last week, not a whole lot to really report, other than that, it sounds like, Public Works is itching to get outside and get some work done as soon as the weather's nice enough. And we did get a couple grants towards the skate park from a couple of local groups, and there's apparently some additional interest in more pickleball courts.
Oh,
So we're looking at solutions for that. That hopefully won't cost too much money.
any questions from the park board representative? Personnel?
Minutes are in there and we voted on hiring the new guy tonight, so.
There you go. Planning and zoning,
We meet the first week of April.
good. Public safety, Sheriff Torgerson is here to give us an update and calls for service.
Actually gonna say a lot more than that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. It's nice to be here, and I should introduce over here is Kevin Schmidt. It's Axel's dog, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he's one of our canine deputies and one of the power shift deputies that is helping cover Stewartville on those alternate nights when Jason's done working. So Jason's off tonight, so Kevin's down here doing our power shift deal. I've got a bunch of different things. I'm just gonna really kind of update you on as far as where the office is with various things. We're hiring 4 new deputies starting this coming Monday, the 28th of March. 3 of them, we do this a lot in the law enforcement. There's the sheriff's office, you have the detention side and the law enforcement side. Detention side, people can come right off the street, there's no required college education, it's high school diploma or GED, and you can apply. We get a lot of people, we get people in there with master's degrees, we have people in there that have been accountants for 25 years in their previous life and wanted to change of pace, and they got it. But then we also get a lot of younger folks, and people just come out of college, want to be in a sheriff's office, we don't have jobs available, they start at the detention side, and then we hire them out of the detention side to go to the law enforcement side. So 3 of these 4 that are starting on Monday are actually started in the ADC a few years ago. So there's kind of this left hand to right hand kind of shell game that happens a lot. So with that, then there's more openings in the detention side. So other things that are we just filled going on within the office, we just filled a investigative position that's been sitting open for quite a while just because of a lot of we've had retirements and things moving around. We have 3 utility deputy positions. A utility deputy is a deputy, it's actually an overfill that the county gave us a few years ago to help offset the challenges we saw coming when COVID hit. 2 years ago, they got the first batch of COVID money, and they wanted to have a bigger courtroom, so on the second floor of what we call the work release facility. So if you're at the courthouse, the government center in Rochester, across the street, 4th Street to the south is called the work release facility, or they're now calling it more commonly the annex. On the second floor of that, they put in a huge courtroom that is, as we've called it since it's happened, since it started, is COVID friendly. The jury box is massive, so they all sit 6 feet apart. The judge is way back, and staff, everybody's way wide apart. And it met the COVID restrictions that were in place at the time, and they're still using that, and they will continue using that, because now if you come to the government center, out the back side, and if you were to go to the 4th floor is completely gutted, because they're redoing, they're gonna make a new courtroom ultimately on the 5th floor, but they started on the 4th floor this year to gut that out. They're gonna move and reconfigure where probation had been on the 4th floor. They're gonna move the court offices, which is for both the civil and court side that manages all the work, the paperwork and everything goes on with the courts. They're gonna move them from the 5th floor to the 4th. Restructure where probation is also on the 4th. And then next year, put a new courtroom back on the 5th floor where court admin, the civil and criminal side of court admin is currently. So there's a lot of moving around. Eventually, when that 5th courtroom, or that 5th floor new courtroom comes in, it'll be a jury trial courtroom, then that annex 2nd floor courtroom will go away. But what that did to us, because we're required by state statute to provide security for judges in the courts, basically we're now protecting 2 courthouses. This is what it's come down to. We have a murder trial starting over there next week, which we're, a little hesitant about, because it's a tough little place to manage in the way it's set up there. Plus there's gonna be other felony trials going on across the street in the regular courthouse. So that then the county commissioners allowed us to have 3 additional deputies on the law enforcement side, 3 additional deputies on the detention side to manage those detainees who we now have to take out of the jail on one side, drive them across the street in a secure van, and then get them inside securely and upstairs, and then keep them there while the trial is going on. And most trials, the judges require them to be out of handcuffs and out of shackles, so they're free, and like any one of us is here tonight. And so that requires some extra eyes on people when they're inside the courtroom. So we're doing that on double duty now in 2 separate courthouses, basically. So that's where we had the 3 utility positions. But with all of the challenges that we've had and the additions and moving around, and we've had some retirements, we haven't been able to fill those positions now for more than a year. So with these 4 new ones, knock on wood, and we hate to say this, we will be fully staffed as of Monday the 28th, but it takes 4 months for these 4 deputies to get out on the street, as we've talked about before. Plus we have a position down here in Stewartville with the power shift deputies, so it's been a lot of shuffling around to get to where we are, but hopefully by July, we will be up to speed where these 4 new deputies will be on the road and going, but there's always some more retirements could come up real quick. So anyway, it's a lot of shuffling. We're doing everything we can to maintain all of that moving around and all the other requirements that we have, plus the contracts, as you guys are certainly aware of. On the detention side, we have 4 new deputies. We just did some interviews yesterday and today. 4 new deputies starting April the 11th for the detention side, and probably 3 more in the first part of June. And our delay there is normally we can start about 6 in the detention side at a time, but because of these 3 guys coming from the ADC to the law enforcement side this week, they're FTOs, they're training people, and they used to be training people in the detention side. Now we don't have enough people in the ADC to train, so we can only start 4 as opposed to starting 6 or 7. So we're staggering how those guys are starting. And then go back to the law enforcement side just briefly. Our list that we have is a pretty good list of people to be hired as law enforcement deputies. But unfortunately, RPD hired 2 of our guys on the list. Austin hired 1 of our guys on the list, and Zimbrota hired 1 of the guys on the list. So we lost 4 people, boom, taken off our list just like that. And so now we're down to about 5 people left, 5 or 6 on our list that we think we can hire after these 4. So that doesn't include these 4 that start Monday. So we still have 5 out there, 5 or 6. I guess there is a 6th one, I think, through the list. But we don't know when that's going to happen, when we'll get to them, and chances are they will be gone too, because if you were to look at the post board, post is the police officer standards and training, that's the governing body that handles and looks over all the hiring and licensing of deputies and officers in the state. I've heard anything, I've never gone on there to look, but I've heard everything from 800 to 1,000 openings in the state of Minnesota for law enforcement jobs right now, today. And that's unheard of, absolutely unheard of. So the hiring of people is challenging. I was just over to Chatfield this last weekend and talking to one of their officers, and they're really struggling right now. And I wasn't real clear on what he was saying, but he basically said they've got their full-time guys, but these small towns really survive on part-time positions, and they don't have any part-time positions, so their full-time guys are filling gaps and trying to make it all work. And it's a struggle. Everybody's really struggling right now. And just historically, going back in my time in law enforcement, in 1985, when I tested to come here to Olmsted County, there's around 400 to 500 people in the room in the big cafeteria taking the test on that one day for jobs for our office as well as our PD. Fast forward to 2015, when I became sheriff, we were getting about 40 to 60 new candidates who would come in and take our test. And then fast forward one more time to more recently, when we did our last interview process that created this more recent list. We had 13 on the law enforcement side and 20 take the test on the detention side. And we can't survive that way. We're really in a very critical point right now. And that's not just us, that's everybody is dealing with it. So that's kind of the tone. It's kind of a negative tone, but it is the reality of what we're dealing with. So we've got a lot of challenges to face as we move forward. We're doing a lot of discussions with the county in relation to retention and recruitment, and the county just hired a recruitment director, something that's going to be full-time helping all of the county departments and offices to look for people and ways to hire and advertise and all kinds of things. So it's a major focus right now for us at the county level. And then, like I said, statewide and regionally, everybody is really working hard. Another thing that's really on our minds and something the sheriff's office is responsible for, I mentioned that we're required by statute to take care of the courts. The other challenge that the courts are dealing with right now is they were around 1,500 to 2,000 cases behind schedule that were backlogged because of COVID. They're now into I think it's around 400 to 600 cases behind backlog. And that's everything from misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, and felony cases. These 2 murder trials we have coming up in the next 2 months, they're county cases, There's several other city cases that haven't even gotten to that level yet. And it's really gonna be a lot of work to get those accomplished and get them to where they either are taking pleas, guilty pleas on situations, or cases might be dismissed, but most of them, they've gone through all of that very carefully. Last November, the courts went through all the felony cases. In December, they went through all the gross misdemeanors. And we're at the level now where they don't think they can take any more pleas. They're really at a place where either they're gonna plead guilty or go to court. So that's another real challenging piece for us. Another on the positive side, the training center, we've talked about it. The Stewartville Fire Department uses the training center out by Fleet Farm. We are going through a phase right now of development. The county just received 7 bids to look at and design a building that will now be part of that training facility, which has been a struggle. We're getting outdoor bathrooms finally, real bathrooms, not porta potties, after about 7 years. So that's a positive for us. The bathrooms are supposed to be ready in next month. So they're developing and designing plans this year for both the sheriff's office, for the training center, and then also for the public works facility. Out there is also getting some additions to bring some staff out there that's been housed as long as they've been there now. It's been probably 10, 11 years, I think, that Public Works has been out there on 50th Street. They're gonna add to their facility as well. So those bids will be coming in, and we'll be looking at them. And the idea is the board has allotted around $10 million to do that building. I don't know if it's gonna be enough. Listening to your discussions here about streets, it's probably not even gonna be close. I know it's not gonna be close because we did some building a few years ago and some pre-planning on it, and the 10 million's not even close, but we're gonna see where it goes, and then we'll have to figure it out. The county board will have to be very involved with that. So we're excited about that, with development this year and the potential of building something out there next year. You already talked about it a little bit. We're always very careful and watch what's going on with road construction and streets and things like that, because that can be something very important to us and public safety in general as to how do we get to where we're going. One of the things I was just talking about, the training center and Fleet Farm, is the road out there, County Road 101 to the north. Right now it's 45th Street, is going through a big construction. They're going to kind of turn 45th Street, is going to wind through that Seneca property there and come out by Fleet Farm right there behind Lowe's. That all work is going to actually start on the 30th of March. So construction season is really going to start kicking off. And it's not a real populated area yet, but there's still going to be some people. And I've always used it. I'm sure the guys still use it. They still cut across road between 60 or 63, over County 1. So we're not going to have that all this summer. So it'll be St. Bridget Road and out towards Simpson and that kind of thing to get around. And really put some time. Of course, you got 52 there too. Anyway, construction season is kicking off, and we're always very careful of that. And then it's just basic general law enforcement stuff. A lot of things going on. I did, in relation to Stewartville, I did get I thought, a very nice comment that I wanted to share with you. A gentleman in church a couple weeks ago came up to me and said, hey, and this kind of segues right into where we're going to go next. And that is, he made the comment that he really appreciated seeing our deputies on 6th Street Southwest. He hasn't seen them there as much in such a long time. And I said, well, when did that start? And he said, well, I don't know, just after the first of the year. Well, that's good, because we got an extra deputy down here, that's why. So he was happy with that, and he's always been concerned. He talked to me a few times about speed on 6th Street. So, where we're at, and I think Jason has provided some numbers. I think he gave you some of the February numbers, right? So I'm not going to jump into that too much, but as you know, and I think too, Bill was telling me beforehand that Sergeant Chad Miller, who's one of our power shift sergeants, has been in there at some point and talked to you about how that's working. So we think it's working pretty good. I know it's really helped a lot, I think. When we were here last year and in previous years, we talked about the day and the number of extra hours that deputies are coming down. They're still coming down here. We're still recording extra hours down here, but not near as much as before. We're also, in some of the discussions we had last year, we hadn't talked much about investigator time, and the additional time that those deputies are putting in when they come to Stewartville, and likewise to Byron and Neota and everywhere else. So the hours are lesser, and we're gonna just keep tracking it. It'll be something Bill and I were talking beforehand, we wanna get together and have some discussions about things and just keep on top of where we're going with this and the power shift positions that we have and, what the future's gonna look like. So, we think it's working. And I know I've seen it, I watch my phone a lot, my phone has the app on it so we can watch the calls for service as they're going on throughout the day and night. I think the guys would be actually quite surprised to hear how many times I check my phone. It's kind of I'm addicted to my phone in many ways. So as far as calls for service, it's the other real key number that we talked about a lot last year, we talked about in previous years. I'm just gonna go through some things in regards to overall years and how they average out. So, and I went back to our client, our computer guys and the dispatch folks and had them run these numbers. So 10 years ago in Stewartville, for 2012, there was 3,532 calls for service in Stewartville, 3,532, which equates to about 294 calls a month, right? 2015, so 7 years ago, the calls for service for the entire year were 3,820 at around 318 a month. So we jumped up roughly 22, 24 in 3 years. In 2017, so and then I said I wanted to have the numbers from the last 5 years. So 2017, 4,367 calls for service, averaging around 363 per month. So we've gone up around 70 calls since in those 3 years, or 5 years from 2012 to 17. 2018, 4,222, roughly 351 per month, so slightly less than the year before, and they're always going to fluctuate, when you get normal years and things that are happening. And then 2019, which is when we started seeing a lot of more aggressive behaviors and a lot of people, something we started seeing across the state. 5,492 calls for service. And that averages out to be 457 a month. So it was a considerable jump, more than 1,000 calls for service in a year in addition to that. Then COVID hit 2020, the numbers went back down, but not significantly. 4,854, we're averaging for 404 a month. And then last year, with COVID and full speed, we had the full year of COVID, 4,154, which is still around, let me see, do the math here in my head, 600, almost 700 more than it was in 2012, more than 10 years ago. And then this year, just so far this year, we're at 834, averaging about 417 just for January and February. So we're back, unfortunately, and that's the real keys that we look for. Now, you can break down these calls for service, and we talked about that a lot last year and some of the discussions we had, and Bill and I and Terry had, looking at, and our real concern when we talked about what we were doing last year, the discussions were the calls for service that we're requiring or making necessary for more deputies to be coming down here from other contracts that we have in the county. And calls like persons in crisis calls, suspicious calls, where it's an unknown factor that's going on, fights or disorderlies and those kind of things. And so I just ran these numbers and looked at what we had for so far this year. And some of these numbers on the low end are actually, I was somewhat surprised, but that's a good thing. So 911 hang-up calls, there was only 3. Again, that's a real unknown, mysterious, we don't know what it is. The deputy that's here will go. Now we have the 2 deputies here, so very likely we're not bringing other deputies down. But again, there's only 3 of them in 2.5 months, because this was up until today. Disorderly conduct calls, again, it surprised me, but it's good. Way to go, Stewartville. Only 6 of them. where in the past that number has been higher than that. And then domestics, which obviously we all know that can be a very unknown factor for law enforcement. Only 8 so far this year, which in other years, and I think I had that in here somewhere. Other years, we'd be looking at, let's see if I can find it. Last year, for the entire year, was 31. Our high was in 2017, 5 years ago or 6 years ago now, with 53. So with only 8, of course, you could look at that and kind of extrapolate that out and do whatever, but each year is different. We don't know what to expect. But on the other end of it, we are staying on course, unfortunately, with persons in crisis calls. That's mental health calls, people threatening suicide or talking about suicide or whatever, some kind of a mental crisis in most cases. We've had 3 search warrants down here already this year. 2 of those I know for sure were narcotic search warrants, so very serious situations. And I can't get into that because it's all court related and it's not public information yet, but the search warrants, where I think it was last year or the year before, we didn't have any search warrants down here in Stewartville. Yeah, last year was none, the year before was 1, and the year before that was 4, and now already this year we've had 3. So again, you can look at all these different things and kind of try to figure it all out. And really, it's probably no good to do that in the middle of a year. It's better off to just wait till the year's over. But we're tracking that. Another call that is a little bit higher, on the higher end as of the first 2 months, is 38 suspicious calls. So we have the 911 calls are real low, but we also, the unknown calls, we also had 38 suspicious person calls or suspicious situation calls. And, again, that's one where chances are we're not going to send one deputy all by themselves. They can go there on their own, because we do that in the county, but now having the second deputy here, depending on, again, if it's between 2 p.m. and 2 a.m., because that's when that power shift team is working. If it's some other time of the day or night, then we are bringing another deputy yet from those other places. And that's where we do have some, still have some hours that are over and above what the contract requires, all of the contracts, but we're still making it happen, and it's a lot less than what it was before. So that's pretty much another sheet here. That's really everything I wanted to go through. It's a lot of numbers, and were you typing those down? I saw you were going through that. If you want me to clarify, I can. Okay, I'll get you those numbers. You really want to make sure we're on the same track. So that's all I had. I just wanted to give to you. You got questions for me? So
any questions from the table?
Concerned about?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you have any input on this new idea of putting a 4-way stop out there at 30 in County 1?
No, none whatsoever.
Well, you better
Do they
let
have,
me guys.
is it a 4-way stop up there?
It's gonna be April 4th.
Oh, no, I didn't have any input. That would most likely be a MnDOT and Public Works.
Well, you better
County.
alert your guys, because I'm sure there's gonna be some pretty good wrecks out
Yeah,
there.
that'll be.
It's pretty interesting trying to stop people who've been used for this.
When's it going in?
Says April 4th on the signs they got flashing out there.
I will, make a note, and I'll get a hold of Kay tomorrow. I just got a nice big notice from Public Works this morning about that whole construction on County 101. That's why it was so fresh in my mind on what they're doing out there, because I was really curious.
Bill?
But, yeah.
Got 2 things. Our city attorney's working on getting all our city ordinances on that electronic state system.
Yeah.
So obviously, from just a city staff or council standpoint, once that's kind of fully in place, we're hopeful this extra coverage now helps us with city violations, whether they be legislative things or things we deal with, and that's where your department can help.
Yeah, well, and generally, even with, Jason being adjusted to this power shift, in most cases, that's something that really needs more immediate attention. So for those things that Jason can monitor, because it's below coordinate stuff.
Yeah.
But wherever we can, no, absolutely.
Since he rotates, we
Yeah.
probably work just to know that they've got to help the city attorney out.
Oh, absolutely. And that's just a matter of calling it in,
See when they come.
yeah, Wallace is phone number handy, and there's a patrol captain, and everything. you know,
Especially when
be
it's
aware of it, and the other end is, yeah, Miller. Start with the trouble,
Which is personal for us.
Yeah, any one of those, but, you know, always start with daycare. And then, but if it's on a day you off, and you need something more, then I'll any one of those, I'll get it. Make sure you get somebody.
Yeah, it's just a matter of process, and, you know, we would get wind of, no, they're not going to do anything, it's not in this system, so they're only doing all she can.
Yeah.
Squared away from that standpoint, and how it follows.
Are you working with the county attorney and on that with prosecution?
Yeah, I think it went to the county attorney's office first, and then court till November, I wanna say,
Yeah.
to do everything.
Because they raised the speed limit up 30 a year.
And it's my assistant Lindsay who's been
Okay.
communicating with them.
That's
so
between
it's
60 and
not that I
75.
Okay, and most likely it will be your company or Jennifer Plant.
Okay.
So it's just make sure that follow through happens, which helps us.
Absolutely. Yeah, just let us know.
Orderly community as well.
Send it to,
And the second thing is the court system told you what what floor with all those changes
Yeah.
citizens go to get.
right now, the citizens still go to the fifth floor.
Because we get calls for that, you know,
Yeah.
where do I take my ticket?
Yeah, the plant, that's a good question, thank you for asking. The way it works right now is if any citizen has to go pay a fine or do anything with the court, whether it's civil or criminal, they still go to the fifth floor for the duration of 2022. At least at this point. At some point in there, there's going to be most likely a shutdown of the court, outside of the more immediate stuff, because obviously whoever we arrest tonight needs to be arraigned in the next 2.5 days. So we've got to go through those things, but court admin is very likely gonna be shut down at some point, on a majority scale, either late this fall or early winter, because I'm gonna move them down to the fourth floor. So the fourth floor has to be completely done, and then they'll move those people down and the probation people back into their new spots, and then they'll clear out this fifth floor. Then, from that point forward, everybody will go through to the fourth floor instead of what they do now on the fifth floor. Because that fifth floor is ultimately going to become a big new jury trial courtroom.
We sometimes obviously get our own citizens that call
Yeah.
that in and some of the area
Yeah.
township
So
residents.
for right now, it's still fifth floor, and then when that comes out, I hope the court does and the county does a really good job of advertising that forward. You know, again, like anything, you put out all kinds of notices, thing you gotta recover, and you're still gonna have 5 people coming in.
I'm sure when they get in the door, it's very clear.
Yeah, and that'll be something that our screening people will be dealing with, because everybody goes to the third floor or above in the courthouse, they have to go through the screening, and, you know, our guys are very adept there on talking to these people and asking them where they wanna go or what they're doing, and, you know, when that happens, they're gonna be able to tell them what they got in there. There's still gonna be some people that are gonna.
All right, thanks for that wonderful update.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Boy,
Enjoy the rain, it's
a lot of stuff going on.
wonderful.
All right, Public Works.
We met last week with the vehicle evaluations.
All right, ready?
They just met today, so minutes will be forthcoming and
Roll call.
and they're gonna meet tomorrow.
Transit Advisory Committee. No report. No communications. That will take us to the open mic. City Council welcomes encourage participation from community members. Please keep in mind that your comments must be pertinent to city business, must adhere to the data privacy rules. No employee's name may be used. Please do not expect action from the council this evening regarding any concerns. We request your comments will be limited to only 4 minutes. Speakers will be recognized only once. At this time, we ask anyone who would like to address the city council, please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please. Would anyone like to use the podium?
My name is Ewan Ferguson. I was just here, I got that anonymous letter that you mentioned as well. It was taped to my door. And I thought maybe you knew who had written it, and that's the only reason I was
They
here.
didn't put their name on those letters?
Yeah, it's anonymous.
What?
Yeah.
That's why
I didn't know that, that's why I was like, why is he on his high horse here? I didn't know why he was talking about that.
It's signed kind regards, your fiscally responsible Stewartville neighbor, so that's not my style, man. you know,
Oh, I
if
know.
I have something to say, I'm gonna put my name on it, or I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell you face to face.
You bet my ears for the last hour over that last one.
Yeah, I can't oversee my life.
Then you were gonna run for office.
I still might, you know. I don't know if I want the job.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you for coming.
Yeah.
All right, that'll take us to the final motion of the
I'll make a
evening.
motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we're adjourned, thank you all.
Jimmy, you did point out why.
Oh, why? Oh, open the meeting again.